everyone. We have been moving through a series together called Start the Party. And it's all about the promise that Jesus made about getting the most out of life. The party that we are invited to when we choose to follow Jesus with our lives. Now, when I say party, I mean any effort to celebrate, serve, or enjoy being with others in a way that adds value to life. And God is calling you to be a party starter, to be someone who invites others to experience the full life that God offers us. So to start this week, let me ask you a question. What do these three things have in common? The most expensive chocolate bar in the world was called Wispa Gold. Now, I say was because it's no longer for sale. It cost $1,628. And for that price, you better believe it came wrapped in straight 24 karat gold. Okay, that was the first thing. Now, the next thing, this impressive piece of architecture, the Sagrada Familia. The designer's name was Antoni Gaudí, and it's taken over 135 years to complete this, and they are still working on it. Gaudí has since died, and architects and engineers are still working on bringing his excessively creative masterpiece to life. He describes his work as a celebration of nature, a celebration of life, and a celebration of God. Okay, that was the second thing. Now lastly, take the most recognized technology in the world, the iPhone and its packaging. I couldn't afford one until I was an adult, and I still question if I should have paid that much money for a phone. But regardless, the experience of opening the precisely crafted, perfectly air-sealed box, taking the dust protector off the screen, lifting up the box within the box to get to the charger. The unboxing experience alone screams quality, value. So what do all three of these things have in common? Well, to start, they all kind of sound ridiculous. I mean, wrapping chocolate in gold, taking 135 years to build a building, unbelievable amounts of attention and detailing for a box. Maybe that's the first thing you think. But then I hear those stories and I think, wow, that takes a lot of guts. That takes creativity. That's bold. And I'm so glad that they were creative in this way. And the world is better because of it. But at the time, when they were imagining wrapping chocolate in gold or building a building that went beyond the lifetime of the architect, or about the sleek packaging of a phone, they were probably thinking, what if this is ridiculous? What if nobody gets it? What if I make a fool of myself? The point is, being creative can be scary. It's why the idea of standing up in front of your English class and reading a poem that you wrote sounds terrifying. Or why you were kind of nervous about showing up to school the day after you dyed your hair blue, even though you loved it and wanted it. There's this fear that being creative in how we dress and what we create and how we express ourselves will lead to isolation, misunderstanding, or even judgment. So what do? Oftentimes we just shut ourselves down. We shut that part of ourselves off, or at least keep it to ourselves. But here's the bigger problem. If everyone is concerned about being judged for being expressive, even when something is worth it, do we just stop celebrating the things that matter most? Don't use emojis, that's showing too much feeling. Don't use exclamation marks, that expresses too much excitement. Anytime you feel joy or excitement or inspiration, just say, that's cool, and keep it moving. Wouldn't living by those rules create a society of insecure, social norm followers walking on eggshells, where everyone criticizes everyone or lives in fear of being criticized themselves? This sounds like the opposite of a real party. There's actually something that happened in Jesus' life that helps us make sense of all of this. There's an event a guy named Luke wrote about that has to do with what we're talking about. He writes about something that happened to Jesus, and as you listen, you see where the idea of worth or value shows up. One of the Pharisees asked Jesus to have dinner with him, so Jesus went to his home and sat down to eat. When a certain immoral woman from that city heard he was eating there, she brought a beautiful alabaster jar filled with expensive perfume. Then she knelt behind him at his feet, weeping. Her tears fell on his feet, and she wiped them off with her hair. Then she kept kissing his feet and putting perfume on them. When the Pharisee who had invited him saw this, he said to himself, "If this man were a prophet, he would know what kind of woman is touching him. She's a sinner. Now, listen to how Jesus responded. I tell you, her sins, and they are many, have been forgiven. So she has shown me much love. Okay, that's a lot happening in this story. So let's look at all the different parts and see how it relates to what we're talking about today. This story has so much to teach us about what we do when something is worth it. Luke tells us that this woman pours perfume on Jesus' feet and then uses her hair to wipe them. Now that may sound strange to us, but in those times, ointments and perfumes were expensive. You saved them for special occasions. That's why when Judas saw her pour it out and use it on Jesus' feet, he complained about how wasteful it was, arguing at the very least that it could have been sold and the money given to the poor. Judas saw the woman in her creative act and judged her for it. He wasn't the only one. Luke tells us that this woman was known in the town and not in a positive way. So no doubt that she was used to being judged or outcast and labeled for her negative reputation. In this time and place, she was already seen as less than because she was a woman. But at a bad reputation, she may as well have been invisible. You can practically hear the disgust from the religious leaders when Luke writes that they were thinking, if Jesus knew what kind of woman she was, he wouldn't let her touch him. But Jesus didn't see it that way. And for whatever reason, this woman took a chance, believing that maybe Jesus was different than these other religious men, where they had discounted her, judged her, and were disgusted by her. She was willing to bet that Jesus might be different. So what does she do? She ignores the judgment of the powerful religious elite, and she focuses instead on Jesus. She takes this expensive perfume and she pours it on Jesus' feet and cries, using her hair to wipe the tears and perfume off. It was gutsy and bold and potentially awkward, but she did it anyway. And while the Pharisees may have felt uncomfortable, Jesus felt grateful. He received it. He watched in awe. How could one act by one woman be seen in two totally different ways? How could one group look at her and be embarrassed for her, mad at her, annoyed by her, and sickened by her? And then Jesus looks at her and he's amazed by her, moved by her, and felt compassion for her. It had everything to do with the perspective of the ones watching. The religious leaders didn't see her as someone made in God's image. They saw her as the sum of whatever she had done or whatever was done to her to earn a bad reputation. In other words, to them, she was worthless. But Jesus saw this woman as loved, as valued, as so much more than what people had said about her and what she had done or hadn't done. Jesus saw a person who by simply existing was considered worthy of his attention, his care, and love. In other words, to Jesus, she was worth everything. The men saw her as worthless, so they saw her act as wasteful. But Jesus saw her as worthy, so he saw her act as worship. This woman took a chance in her creative expression of love towards Jesus. And the Pharisees didn't get it. The people watching didn't get it, but Jesus did. He saw her creative act as a kind of worship because of how he saw her, as worthy. A party starter knows because of everyone's worth, creativity can be an act of worship. This woman did something different. She got creative in the way that she worshiped Jesus. And those watching, they didn't get it, but they didn't have to get it because Jesus did. He saw her act differently because he saw her differently. So what does that mean exactly? It means that because you are made in the image of God, what you do creatively has value because you have value. It means that because others were made in the image of God, what they do creatively has value because they have value. A party starter lives knowing that it's the image of God in us that makes our creative expressions have value. So how can we be this kind of party starter? Well, let's think about it in a kind of a funny way. Have you ever noticed how popular these things are again? Disco balls got their start back in our grandparents' day, and now you can get them at Urban Outfitters. There's just something about them that helps make a party a party. Actually, there's a few things about them that stick out. They're expressive, meaning that they're really hard to miss. They light up a room and fill it pretty boldly. And they're also extra. Let's just be honest. As trendy as they are, disco balls are extra. All that light and the spinning effect and the reflection of the light that hits you right in the eye when all you're trying to do is chill or dance. Extra. And the last thing is they're experimental. The first disco ball had to be an experiment. Maybe it was like, hey, let's take tiny pieces of mirror, glue them to a basketball, shine light on it, and spin it in the middle of the dance floor. That's a weird idea. But did it work? Yes, because here we are today still buying and talking about them. And here's what I'm saying. What if when it came to how we celebrate others, we were more like this? So here's a few ways how. First, be expressive. Tap into the bravery to celebrate others, verbally and openly, despite who might be looking on and criticizing. So don't be too insecure to celebrate others. Onlookers might be judgmental, but when you see the value and worth of others, celebrate them. It takes vulnerability and courage to express yourself and to celebrate someone else. Express when you see someone winning. Express when something is worth complimenting. Express your views and your values whenever it can create a better experience for someone else. And next, be extra. Splurge on celebrating others. Go all out. Break out the expensive perfume. Add the extra decorations and the finishing touches. Write a handwritten letter. Use people's names and make eye contact when you talk to them. Create moments and vibes and works of art that make people stop to feel seen and welcomed. And last, be experimental. As you start the party for other people, use whatever you have to celebrate their worth. It was hair and tears and perfume for the woman in the story. Listen, if when you hear the word creative, you think crayons and markers and artwork, you're gonna have to expand your definition of creative. Creative just means putting unexpected things together to make or create something new. That TikTok that lives in your head rent-free is because someone took the extra time to get creative and intentional about fun and humor and the unexpected. Being a party starter is about reflecting who God is back to the world. God sees all people as worth it and goes to great lengths to add to the creative details for all of humanity. I mean, look around. From people to nature to science to art, there is an ongoing party celebrating the dignity of all humans. We get the chance to help people see God every day when we get creative and celebrate others. When we change our perspective of others from not worth it to worth it, our response towards them goes from feeling wasteful to being an act of worship toward God. This is how you get the most out of the full life Jesus promised. What if we stopped underestimating the power creativity has to change how someone sees themselves and refuels their hope for the future? What if there was an entire generation who refused to be silenced by the fear of judgment and embraced every opportunity of letting people know just how worth it they are? In a critical, judgmental, insecure world, choose to be a party starter. Every party starter knows because of everyone's worth, creativity can be an act of worship.